I'm pumped to be able to welcome my second guest on the channel, James Egerton, sharing his outstanding work with English, languages and accents. If you're watching the premiere, both James and I are in the live comments and we'd love to hear from you. There'll be lots of questions throughout, so make sure to get involved in the live comments, or if you're watching later, in the replay. James, take it away.
Could you introduce yourself, please? Hello, everybody. My name is James Egerton. I am a teacher and teacher trainer living in Rome, Italy. I'm also a lover, a child, a mother, a sinner, and a saint, and I do not feel ashamed. Also, I'm your hell, I'm your dream, I'm nothing in between, and I wouldn't want it any other way. No, seriously though, that's an interesting one, isn't it, when you're introducing yourself, because your identity is so varied, and you're a different person depending on the situation and the people that you're with. So it's definitely an area that I'd like to investigate and research more deeply in an academic sense. So thank you, Al, for asking me to introduce myself. There you go. You never get two words with me. You get 0 or 500.
So how would you introduce yourself, and does it depend on the context? Go on and introduce yourself in the live comments, or if you're watching later, introduce yourself in the comments below in the usual way.
Tell us about the process of blogging. Yeah, okay, so I didn't say that one of my identities is a blogger. I have a blog, jamesegerton.wordpress.com. The process is that I have an idea, okay? Nobody obliges me to write. I have an idea usually when I'm out running or cycling. So, things come to mind because I have no other distractions and I have that mental clarity that sort of exercise gives you. And so I'll come home, and usually over 2 or 3 days, I'll start to take notes. I might take a few notes on my phone and then come back to it. I might take a few notes on WordPress and then come back to it. And then I always leave at least 2 hours to sit down, because I know myself, and I know that once I sit down to start something, I'll get lost in it for a couple of hours. So it's really important for me to give myself time. I don't, for example, just do 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there. I really sit down and get into it and get engrossed, completely involved in what I'm doing. And then, of course, there's a bit of editing at the end. There's usually a few typos that I've missed also. So sort of friends and family will tell me when I need to edit, even after it's published. But that's the overall process, yeah. It starts with an idea, like everything else.
How do you work best? In lots of short 10-minute sections, or in one longer 2-hour block like James? Type 10 or 2 in the comments.
Who are your blogs for, and what topics do you cover? So this is an interesting question. Principally, I think my blogging is for myself, and that sounds a bit strange, doesn't it, when you publish it publicly, publish them publicly. But the process of writing for me is very, very useful to improve my thought process and critical thinking skills, because when you're writing, you really have to organize your thoughts. Okay? So, of course, we sort of walk around all day with 100 thoughts running around our heads, and we never organize them properly unless we sit down to write. So for me, it's a process of clarifying my thoughts and exploring ideas which I'm interested in. Also, I hope they're also useful for other English teachers, other learners of English, and also people who are interested generally in the topics I'm interested in, which are critical thinking, sort of a rational scientific approach, and then applying it to everyday life. Like I've done a couple of blogs recently on habit formation and the science behind habit formation, and how you can use that to get great results in the longer term by being consistent in your habits. So I have the main sections on the blog are lesson plans for English teachers, media literacy, which is about critical thinking, especially with all the information that we get at the moment, the tidal wave of information which washes over us. I think it's super important, not just for English learners, but for everybody. Other sections are Zoom teaching. I've done a lot of blogs and a lot of work recently with teachers around the world on improving their online teaching skills.
How do you organise your thoughts? By writing, like James does?
What 2 pieces of advice would you give an English learner? Only 2. Okay. Number 1, do not be afraid to fail in a constructive way. And actually, I'd like to even go further than that. Don't be afraid to fail. Embrace failure as a part of the process of learning, okay? Because if you never fail, it just shows me that you've never got outside of your comfort zone. And if you have a negative reaction to making a simple grammatical or lexical mistake, then you're going to avoid trying new things, experimenting with new language, pushing yourself that extra mile. So yeah, your attitude to failure has to be healthy, and understand that when you make a mistake, most of the time it's because you're pushing yourself into a level above where you already are. So it's part of the process, and you really need to get comfortable and also enjoy that process. It's frustrating for a second, but then the next second you should remind yourself, oh, actually, this is how we learn, and this is true for a language and anything else. Number 2, the second piece of advice is to do tons of listening. I'm very much in agreement with the Krashen approach, in which he says that the more listening you do, the better, especially if you're sort of beginning with a language, because that's how we learn our first language, right? When we're babies, we listen for over a year, and then after that we start to produce. So lots and lots of listening on topics that you're interested in. Okay? Hopefully, Alistair's blog, for example, I'm super interested in all of the topics that he releases every Monday evening. But anything you're interested in, you can find it in English. So if you're interested in Formula One, you can watch documentaries about Formula One in English. If you're interested about, I don't know, sewing, you know, YouTube is a beautiful thing. There's a lot of resources on sewing that you can watch. So, you know, make it enjoyable as well. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Try to learn something that you would like to learn, and learn it in English, so you're working on 2 things at the same time. I think that's 3 pieces of advice, so I'll stop.
Embrace failure as part of the process of learning, and lots of reading and listening. Do you agree with James? Type yes in the comments if you agree. And what 2 pieces of advice would you give an English teacher?
Oh, wow, I love this question. What's your favourite part of the Northern Irish accent? Al, I love your accent. My favourite part. So as a English teacher and pronunciation enthusiast, my favourite part, probably the flat vowels. You can explain this a lot better than I can. But the flat vowels, the different vowel sounds, that actually changes the whole, it changes not only the sound of the word, but also the intonation of the sentence. I find that absolutely excellent. I really enjoyed the police sergeant on Peaky Blinders. He was great. Every time he spoke, I was just cheering. Oh, Tommy Shelby, I am here to clean up the city. And I don't know why I always I have to sort of put my face back when I do a Northern Irish accent. Yeah, it's a beautiful sound in Northern Ireland. What is your accent, and give 1 way it is different to the Northern Irish variation? Well, it sort of goes back to what I was saying about identity, my accent will change slightly with the person that I'm speaking to. Okay. So, as I said to you jokingly in a text out, I never have a Jamaican accent like Brad Pitt in that film where he comes back from the dead. It's never Jamaican, but there is a variation in my accent. If I'm talking to somebody who I perceive to be of a higher social class, and I feel that I want to impress them, even subconsciously, then almost subconsciously also I'll turn into an accent which is a little bit more formal, where I'm articulating a little bit more clearly. The other end of the spectrum for me, in my range, is when, for example, I was working on building sites, construction sites, in the summer holidays when I was at school and college and university. And generally speaking, the guys there spoke in a different way, much less formal. And so I didn't, of course, try to imitate them, because you know, what's the point of being, imitating other people to try to fit in? Then you're just a kind of a fraud, right? You're a fake. But also subconsciously, again, I did go to the other sort of less formal end of my pronunciation spectrum in order to try to fit in, certainly. But that's, yeah, it's really, really interesting. As we were discussing the other day, it's sort of a result of George Orwell's thoughts on accent and identity, where he said something like, well, I'm upper lower middle class in his book, The Road to Wigan Pier. He said, I'm upper lower middle class. I might have got that slightly wrong. And then he was talking about how he went to the north of England, and nobody said their H's, but hotel, and how the pronunciation actually directs somebody's identity. And that for me is again fascinating.
What's your accent, and does it change depending on the situation? Chat to each other in the comments section.
One way it is different from the Northern Irish, well, as I said before, the vowels. So I would say vowel is much more rounded, I'd say, in the vowel sound. Vowel, and sorry if I'm butchering this, vowel. Again, look, the face goes like vowel. So yeah, the vowel sounds are much rounder. What is one skill that you're passionate about? Oh, right, let me loose. Only one. Okay, so I'm going to choose a skill which I think is an umbrella skill for all of the other skills that I'm passionate about. So the umbrella skill is how to try to make the most of the 20 centimeters between your ears. Mindfulness, mindset, particularly growth mindset principles by a body of research which is led by Stanford professor Carol Dweck. So why are these important to everything that I do? Because your attitude to what you do shapes the way that you do it, right? So very, very briefly, growth mindset is another part of my blog, actually, another of my key areas. I should have mentioned that before, but hopefully this can go into the video also. I also write about mindset and teaching about mindset. So it's about a healthy attitude to failure, okay? The belief that nobody is born with all of their talents, so everything is improvable, and people that have got to high levels have done it through tons of well-directed work. Also respecting other people's achievements, because you know that they're not magical creatures, that they worked hard to get there, and it changes your whole attitude to people. So in terms of my hobbies, like running, for example, I use that attitude to work on my weaknesses, to understand that failure is part of the process, and to enjoy other people's achievements. When friends run faster than me, I congratulate them, and I genuinely feel happy for them, rather than jealous that they've been born with something that I haven't. that's an argument for another day. There's a certain genetic element, but I think the vast majority of what we can achieve is due to how we think about things. So yeah, I use that for running, I use that for writing, I use that for other skills that I'm also learning at the moment, like jiu-jitsu. So yeah, physical and cognitive skills, they all depend on your mindset. How should interested clients contact you? Clients sounds somewhere between formal and a bit naughty. So I am a teacher and a teacher trainer. As I said, I can be contacted on my email address, jegerton89@gmail.com. I have a bit more time this summer, so if anybody would like to work with me over the next few months, I would be particularly interested in hearing from you. So thank you very much, Al, for the interesting questions, and thanks for making me think. Cheers.
Make sure to check out those details in the live comments or in the description below. If you have some free time this summer, absolutely give James a shout. Finally, a huge thank you to James for appearing on the channel. Over here, you can check out some of his work, as there's a playlist about critical thinking and media literacy, which James helped form.